You're listening to Canadian Musician Radio.
So hey there everybody, Andrew here. Welcome back to Canadian Musician Radio. Very happy to be joined on the line today by Brian Murray. He is the man behind Guitar Workshop Plus. It's a program you've probably heard about in Canadian Musician if you've been reading over the last, several years. And the name, it's a bit of a misnomer because there's also programming in there for bass players, drummers, keyboardists, vocalists. Essentially, it's a very robust musical program. Invites a bunch of attendees to campus. There's 2 Toronto sessions and a Vancouver session, as there has been the last several years. This year, as we're going to hear from Brian shortly, though, they've rolled out a brand new session in San Diego, California. Each one spans a few days. It brings students, musicians of all skill levels together to learn from a number of very well-renowned faculty, including some guest artists that realistically are kind of at the top of the list when you think of virtuosity. Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Alex Lifeson, just a short sampling of some of the names that have taken part in the past. GuitarWorkshopPlus.com is where you can go for more information. We'll remind you of that later in the program, but geez, a bit of a mouthful. Brian, thanks a ton for joining us today. Why don't we talk a little bit about, I gave people a quick introduction, but I'd love to hear in your words a little bit more about what Guitar Workshop Plus is all about, and more so what it offers attendees year after year.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Andrew. And the program basically started, the whole concept was to give people the opportunity to learn in an environment that they can't really find elsewhere. And they're learning from first call musicians, and they get the opportunity to also experience the guest artists when they come through. And the guest artists, what's unique about the program is that the guest artists don't just show up and perform and then leave. The guest artists are also coming into the classrooms and working with students with instruments in hand, and of course they'll also perform and do Q&A and meet and greets and all of that kind of thing. But it's really a unique opportunity for participants to work with elite musicians, with instruments in hand, and you just can't really do that anywhere else.
Yeah, I mentioned the 2 Toronto sessions, one in Vancouver and then new for 2015 in San Diego. Just to let people know, we'll remind you later, but the Toronto session 1 is July 19th to 24th. The second one is July 26th to the 31st. It heads out to Vancouver August 11th to 16th, and then the brand new one in San Diego actually kicks everything off, June 21st to 26th, all 2015. Let's talk about the fact that it's multi-days, and the guest artist and faculty announcement for 2015 is going to be coming in the new year. We're going to have Brian back to talk about that when the time comes, and there'll be a lot more details, but let people know, it's several days in a row. What's a little breakdown of some of the things that attendees would be doing from day to day that is part of the tuition cost for each session?
Sure, yeah. I'll give you like a daily breakdown. It's basically participants can choose a stream that they want to focus on. So if they're a guitar player, they can choose acoustic or rock, blues, jazz, classical. Of course, we have the bass, drum, keyboard, vocal programs, and songwriting programs as well. And there's different levels, beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels of all of the courses. So a typical day would consist of, let's just take an example. If someone was in a rock class, they're in their class from 9 till 3 with lunch in between. They have a lot of hands-on instruction, working on technique and, applied theory as it applies to whatever style they're studying. They also have rhythm section classes where they go in with the faculty rhythm section and they play every day. And that's also a unique thing because it gives them the opportunity to interact with other musicians and they're focusing on things that, unless they play with other musicians, they've never thought about things like dynamics and being sensitive to a vocalist or the soloist or things like that. So they get a lot of playing opportunities. They also have an ensemble that they're assigned to and they rehearse with throughout the week, and all the ensembles perform at the end of the week. So that's a highlight for a lot of the students. They really enjoy that. And then in addition to that, in the afternoons, evenings, we have clinics and concerts. So even though they're in a rock class, they might want to go to a percussion clinic tonight and a slide guitar thing tomorrow and an improvisational clinic another day. So they can kind of broaden their horizons and sample some other things. And then the concerts range from faculty performances at the beginning of the week to, of course, the aforementioned student concerts. And, of course, the guest artist will also perform. So it's kind of a full immersion in music. You're living, eating, breathing music for 5 days, and it's just a great atmosphere, very supportive atmosphere to learn in.
I mean, one of the big draws here is the guest artists that stop by, and I mean, I named 3 off the top, but again, GuitarWorkshopPlus.com, I think you'll truly be amazed at some of the folks that have taken part in the program in the past. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but I mean, I know that when I first heard about the program, this was one of the first things that jumped into my mind, but what about highlights? Are there any fun memories you have about one of the really, really big names that you've had taking part? And one of the experiences maybe that artist had with either a group of attendees or maybe even an individual student that you think would, make that person, give them a memory that they quite simply will never forget.
Oh yeah, I mean we've had many of those moments, and I mean we've brought grown men to tears on stage, and literally. I mean I can remember we're proudly a Canadian program, so we always want Canadian artists, and I'll use Alex Lifeson as an example. He's a great guy. If he didn't make a living as a professional musician in the great band of Rush, he could be a professional comedian. He's that funny. But it took a while for him to come in because obviously Rush is always busy recording and touring, but when he came in he loved it, and he did something really special. We had both him and Rick Emmett, another great Canadian player, on stage together, and they were kind of doing a clinic and a performance together, which was the only time that's ever happened anywhere was on our stage. But what was really cool was they brought up, this happens a lot, guest artists will bring up students on stage, and they kind of had a little blues jam at one point, and I mean we literally had grown men leaving the stage crying like it was the highlight of their life. It's a real special thing when things like that happen,
Absolutely. Let me ask you one more, Brian, and I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with that. I mean, what is it that you find so rewarding about putting this on in your position as the man behind it all? I mean, what is it that keeps you going? And I got to assume that it kind of goes hand in hand with those moments where you have grown men on stage getting emotional because you've brought something so special to them, like an experience that you can't get many other places. What stands out for you?
Well, I mean, as the director of the program and as a musician myself, I mean, I was a professional guitar player for 20 years before I became an administrator of this program. One of the most rewarding things for me and for us here is when we have a lot of returning students that come back year after year, and you can use the example of a teenager who they attend the first time and they have aspirations of being the next big rock star, and they're focused on just rock playing. But then they come to our program, they grow as a rock player, they kind of get to where they want to get to, but they're also exposed to other styles of music, for example jazz or acoustic music that maybe they had never been exposed to, and all of a sudden they get into that and they say, wow, I want to get into that and round myself out as a player. And so the most rewarding part is when you see those students come back after 3-4 years and they've blossomed into a really solid, versatile musician that can play in many different styles with many different people. And many of those students, the younger ones, they go on to post-secondary music programs and make a living in the industry. And then we have the adult hobbyists that come in, and you can see their improvement all the time. And of course, we have the semi-pro and the pro players that attend. So that's the most rewarding part for me is that music education, as I'm sure you're aware, it's one of the first things that gets cut in budgets from local governments, and it's happening everywhere. The first thing they cut is music and arts programs. So we're kind of filling that void and providing that quality music education that people aren't getting elsewhere.
Well, there you have it again. We're speaking with Brian Murray. Guitar Workshop Plus is the program. GuitarWorkshopPlus.com is where you can go for more information about the program in general. There's also some preliminary details there for 2015, but we'll be back in the new year with more, including some of the names that are going to be joining each of the 4 respective sessions in the 3 cities. First time in San Diego, California, which is cool for our friends south of the border, but yeah, the other 3 up here in Canada, West Coast and Central. Brian, thanks a ton for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks a lot, Andrew.
All right, we'll be back with more Canadian Musician Radio. Don't go away.
The sun betrayed your seedy grin, and now I'll bring you in. Hey you, are you